Our first speaker, he entered the U.S. Air Force in 1979 and would go on to serve 27 years in active and reserve status with various assignments at various bases around the world during his career. But perhaps his most notable was while he was assigned as a security police law enforcement patrolman at Royal Air Base RAF Bentwaters in England during the peak of the Cold War. And in December of 1980, he became one of the primary witnesses to the now famous Rendlesham Forest incident, an event that would obviously forever change his life. He's co-authored 2 books, 2014's Encounter in Rendlesham Forest, and in 2020, Weaponization of an Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, the Rendlesham Forest Incident 40 years later. Please welcome John Burroughs to the stage. Joining John is a man who has served as public defendant and later opened his own law practice concentrating on federal civil litigation as a consumer rights attorney. After meeting John at a UFO conference that I think he actually put that conference together in 2011, John asked him for help in getting the government to recognize he'd been injured in the Rendlesham Forest incident. And 4 years later, they would indeed be successful in awarding John full disability, and in doing so have the U.S. government admit by de facto, for the first time ever, that a UFO was the proximate cause of injury to a human. He was also part of the 2013 citizen hearing on disclosure held at the National Press Club in DC and contributed to the 2 books that John authored. Please welcome Patrick Frascanga.
Today we will discuss the following: an overview of the encounter, what happened, especially for those of you who don't know. The struggle to get information from the government. Again, when this all began, I had no idea this is where we would go. John's medical records have become key to that. The Department of Veterans Affairs and their admission by de facto, ultimately, and boy, this is not anything I thought I was signing up for. Years later, that John was actually injured by an unidentified aerial vehicle. Following that, John's going to give a summary of the work that he's done since that time. That John asked me if I could help him do something he had been trying to do on his own, and that was to get his medical records, because John's health had started to decline, and he needed medical records from the time he was in the Air Force for his civilian doctors to render the proper care. So, first thing we did was we began issuing FOIA requests to all the agencies you see on here. And this was a fascinating process. It also proved to be completely futile. After about a year of issuing, I think it was 2 rounds of letters. This is an example of one here to AFOSI. And we get a typical response like we're getting here that, you know, this is the letter to AFOSI in which I was asking for, you know, whether John Burroughs was mentioned in relation to lights, plasma fields, vehicles, what have you. And the common response would be either no, we don't have them in our records, we don't know anything about it. I could have asked these people if they have record of any paperclip purchases by their office in the last 50 years, and they would have said, we don't know. Now, John's issues related to Rendlesham, issues with his sight, that was more or less immediately afterward. There was specific damage to his heart that was not realized until many years later, although I think it was just a few years later after the incident he would become aware that something had happened. What's important is, though, when he entered the Air Force, he had no heart problems at all. These were all significant. John will talk more about those. And of course, someone wanted it hidden, and some see it as critical evidence. John will also talk about that. Okay, so here's the basic problem. The VA, John had the medical problems, and the VA requests for disability and medical records were being denied, just summarily denied. Okay. His attempts were about as futile as mine were to get anything from the government through the FOIA request. John Kyle, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, a senator from Arizona at the time, was the one who found out that his medical records were classified.
Okay, starting off with, as Pat said, I've been involved in 2 books. This is the second one, Weaponization of Unidentified Air Phenomena. And what I'm going to do now is kind of go through my research. I started right after I really started getting sick, and some of the things that happened to me from that point all the way to today. Okay, the phenomenon, there's just some pictures here that show, you know, it goes back to the time, prehistoric time. You know, they've seen different things along the way. So when people say, you know, it's all our technology we're seeing today, well, I don't know, were we flying around with this kind of stuff way back, you know, hundreds of years ago? No, I don't think so. As Albert Einstein says, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. All right, I'm going to go into a report that played a big role in part of my settlement. It was the UK MOD report 552-0, known as the Condon report, okay? And in the report, I'm going to give you some highlights from it. It says the phenomenon occurs on a daily worldwide basis, that the UAP exists is indisputable, credited with the ability to hover, land, take off, accelerate, yada, yada, yada. So it goes into the details of the study that they've been working on inside the British government. Here's the big question. Have we reached a tipping point in the phenomenon and its public perception, and how it has to be treated by various organizations, the media and the politicians? Okay, as everyone mostly knows, a string of leaked videos has put the Defense Department and intelligence agencies in a position where they can no longer shrug off the reports of UFOs. And like I said, now the media is talking about it, which is good. You have some people stepping out of the shadows like Michio Kaku and all those that were real hesitant. They're starting to talk a little bit more. But guys, they knew about this. They just didn't want to step out on a limb. So again, that's a good thing, what they did as far as To the Stars. You know, they did a good thing where they're getting people to take this more seriously and talk about it, okay? As you know, the Navy acknowledged that the videos were real, and that went back and forth. Somebody said it was, somebody said it wasn't. But ultimately, what choice did they have? These videos are out there, they're being shown on TV. They clearly show real footage. They have the pilots talking about it. They tracked the pilots down and confirmed it was going on. So there's been a big question of, did the Navy want this to happen? I don't know for sure, but I would say that there's a good chance that those videos ever surfaced, you still wouldn't be hearing about it today. Okay. And like I said, they confirmed, you know, the reports, some of the things that were going on, and they could potentially pose a threat to national security after these videos drove home the fact that they had to say something.